practicing artist for over 40 years. What experience or experiences have been most influential to you as an artist?
I think I would really start with my childhood. I'm probably third or fourth generation artist. My great grandparents, my grantios and my tios and my cousins and I. There's one or two in every generation. Most of them have been folk artists. One of them was a pinstriper who did the detailing on cars. And my current generation, my cousin, he does gourds, carving and painting gourds. I'm probably the only one that's gone into the art world. But I would say when you grow up in a family in which that has already pre-existed, there is an anticipation. From the moment I started to pick up a pencil and draw or do anything, even before I went to school, I had this sense of permission. It was like, oh, okay, she's going to be the one, you know. And in terms of the work that I do now, and particularly the ofrendas, I was very lucky. I went to a program called Teacher Corps in the 1960s, and it was a special program to bring minorities into inner city communities. And I was on a Latino team that had as the lead teacher the first Oaxacan teacher in San Francisco Unified School District, and she was my mentor. And because she was Oaxacan, she practiced the traditions of the Days of the Dead. And this is really right at the beginning of the movement. She was also quite close friends with Ralph Maradiaga and Rene Yanez and the people from the Galeria de la Raza, the Casa Hispana de Bellas Artes. This is all in San Francisco. And she introduced me to them, and she kind of mentored me. So when I met Yolanda, and I was in my 20s then, she really introduced me to the deeper traditions, beginning with Mesoamerican issues of Mictlán, and then the folk forms. She was a master of papel picado. She was a mentor to a whole generation of Chicanos in the Bay Area in California. And I'm still close with her. She's in a retirement home now, but we talk frequently. And I am ever grateful to her because not only did she introduce me to the traditions of the Days of the Dead, but folk art forms. She was a master teacher. She taught at San Francisco State, demonstration teaching when she wasn't in public school. And I learned from her how to teach, how to use objects to teach, how to use music and literature. She was just a master. So she was the first person that I think really saw the potential in me in terms of moving away from more Western art. The Galeria and the Chicano movement and the ofrendas and Yolanda, oh my God, it was like coming home. It was like finding some sort of space of being yourself. And it stayed with me. It's always been with me. So, you know, I chose this way of making art. It expanded and changed over the years, but it began from those early family experiences, from my role in the Chicano movement, and from my mentorship by Yolanda Garfias-Wu.
You are well known for altar making and most recently unveiled this beautiful new altar here at the San Antonio Museum of Art. Can you please share the name and the inspiration behind the altar?
Yes. Well, she is a replacement lady. So what happened was the original Cihuateotl, which were the women who died in childbirth, and in Mictlán, they carried the sun to its setting. The place was called Cihuatlampa, and it was a land of women. And I used it as a theme in one of my Venus MV biography pieces. And it's called Cihuatlampa, the place of the giant women. And I would say that the Cihuateotls also embody the sense of largeness, power, courage, you know, unruliness, all the things that we are and that don't ever fit anywhere, at least not in my childhood. I mean, I'm a person who came up in the 1950s. If you ever watched Nickelodeon, that was the world I knew. In the early years when it was first thought up, it came out of much larger sort of, I wouldn't call it research. I would call it more like a desire for origins that Chicanos in my generation had. So places like Aztlán or Aztitlán, which was its original name, the northernmost part of the empire, were a way for us to feel that we were not foreigners, that we were not like dislocated. You know, that whole story, we didn't cross the border crossed us. It was a phenomenal moment of understanding for all of us. I thought a lot about the original space of the Venus Envy chapter, Cihuatlampa, Place of the Giant Woman, is very much like a woman's dressing room. That's why she had a mirror. And originally the piece had a whole vanity set with perfume bottles turned into trees. It was very elaborate. I don't know what happened to that part. You know, I recycled a lot, so who knows? It might have just disappeared somewhere. And so in between, I created the new one where she sleeps and has the hand mirror. It used to be a standing mirror. But then I thought, okay, no mirror. What are we going to do? She has to get dressed somewhere. She has the cape, she has a dress, she has shoes. She can't just like put them on without looking. And then I decided, she needs a big full-length mirror, something I have never had and always wanted. So I bought myself one. It was 8 feet by 4 feet. And I gave it to her, but I put myself in it because in the original Cihuatlampa chapter, there's a series of prints on the wall of women that I consider my giant women. And one of them is me at the age of 25, bare-breasted with these pantaloons in Golden Gate Park when I was a hippie. And my photographer was laying on the ground, so he shot me from below and made me look really tall, and it's a black and white photo. And eventually it became part of the invitation to Cihuatlampa in 97 when the show first opened in New York. So I recycled her in the mirror, but I turned her golden. And I decided she needed a little low altar. And then we gave her a golden sun out of glass and a glass kneeling figure, which is one of the few Mesoamerican Cihuateotls that I've ever found. And then 2 conch shells for calling the gods, and also because they're like a woman's private parts. They're like a vulva, so that was one of the reasons for. And one is pink and fleshy, and the other is kind of white and silvery. They're very lovely. And my friend Viviana Paredes, a great Chicana glass artist, one of our leading stars in this group of artists coming up in these years, she made them for me. I hired her, and so that's what we premiered, which was the Celestial Cihuateotl. And she's in the room back with the clothes and the shoes. And I did not bring back the Black Virgin, but I liked the idea of the little Cihuateotl being her other part, mi otro yo. So that's the new piece.
In 2021, during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, you created a virtual altar titled In a Time of Healing, Ofrendas of Remembrance, in collaboration with Yvonne Gallardo for the NALAC Latinx Summit. How has transforming your work into digital spaces impacted your altar making?
You know, it's so interesting because I thought a lot about it. COVID reminded me of AIDS. I lived through AIDS. And I was at the Galeria then, and people there at the Mission Cultural Center, many of us were doing ofrendas for the dead, and there was massive numbers. And often they use Saint Sebastian as the patron saint. When you think of spirituality, it's boundless. It's no location of the natural world. It's not a space. It's not a country. It's not a city. It's not your home, but it can be. So spirituality to me had these sort of open dimensions. So when I thought about the internet and thought about the digital, I thought, I could treat it as a spiritual space where anyone can enter from any place, anywhere. And so the idea that people could place their beloved's pictures there, you know, the whole idea of saying the names, that was one of the things that, not just at the Galeria, but all over the Chicano Onda, where people were doing Days of the Dead. Much as we see on 9/11 in New York, people would get up and read the names. And if you read the name, it was like saying, this is my loss. This is the wonderful person I knew that lived in this world, and don't forget them. So to me, the digital world was just like this open virtual roll call that would then reach so many people, much more than if we were, in the park at the Galeria with a little microphone saying out the names. Those things are dear to me, and I don't ever forget those days, because when we were doing the Days of the Dead in San Francisco, we were dealing, before AIDS even, in the 80s, we were dealing with the dead from the Central American wars, the immigrant families who had lost. We were dealing with police violence. We were dealing with gang death. We had ways of embodying those losses and the ceremonial love. And I'm looking at it not just from the point of view of the Days of the Dead, but the purpose of it, which is to address grief and loss, which is the other side of love. And how does that work together? What are our strategies beyond even Days of the Dead? Like when you think about it, the yard shrines, the capillas, when you think of the descansos that you see at the side of the road when someone's died in an accident, there are so many forms of honoring the dead, and most importantly, of remembering. Memory girds us against loss. We lose more than most people do, not just through death, but through racism and discrimination and abuse and police violence and erasure and invisibility. We lose ourselves sometimes. And so memory is it's our armor. Everybody remembers. So to me, Day of the Dead is probably the boldest and biggest strategy of memory that we as Latinos and Chicanos use in our forms of art, because we began not just making them as personal ofrendas, we started making them as public ofrendas so that others could participate. The digital, I think, has a great future, and I'm hoping we get back at it again.
Your work is deeply personal, and altar making is deeply personal. Do you have an altar in your home or somewhere special to you that you can describe to us?
I make a distinction between the altar, which is truly the permanent ongoing record of the family, and the ofrenda, which is the altar extended for the Days of the Dead. So one is a more permanent ongoing practice and the other is an ephemeral practice. I did ofrendas for all of my family. The one thing I knew from when I was getting older and taking on this role, that when the moment came and each of them passed, if I was still alive, I would do two things. I would do their eulogy and I would make their ofrenda. My mother passed first, and I did a very elaborate one at the Oakland Museum. She took a picture once in Pacific Palisades. She probably was 19, so it would be in the 30s, sitting in the moon. And my mother actually could have been in the movies. The people from Hollywood came looking for her once when they were living in Santa Monica because she was so beautiful. My father said she would come every day at a certain time. I think it was to get the mail or go to the grocery store. And all the men would gather in a little coffee shop grocery store across the way and watch for her because she was so beautiful. And then I did my father's when he passed, and it was very agricultural, very green and mossy. And the danzantes in San Jose came to dance for him, and that was very, very dear to me. And then I did my brother's, who came next, and he was 2 years older than me. And he was a cyclist and a sportsman, so his was like a fishing one, bicycling one. And then the worst one of all, which I'll try to get through without weeping, was my sister Judith Angela. So when she passed, I just wasn't sure I could do that, but I did, because I knew exactly what she wanted. Her two favorite films were Breakfast at Tiffany's and Marie Antoinette. And you can't go wrong, right? So I borrowed from one of my early pieces from the Venus Envy series, the Holy Communion. I took the vanity, but I did it all, everything in pink. And that was the toughest one.
Why is it so important to continue the tradition of altar making?
Because grief will never go away. Death will never go away. We will continue to lose it and lose people that are important to us. And when you're younger, it's not so clear. But as you age, I saw it with my father. And my father used to say to me, "Oh, mija, you don't understand. It's like you're going down this big road and you have all these people walking with you. And little by little, they disappear. And pretty soon, you're almost alone on that road. He said, you have to be ready for that. And it's already happened to me many, many times. I don't think we can let go of it for very many reasons. But the deepest is it's our way of living out the lives foretold to us. Our ancestors knew, this is sort of from Walter Benjamin, I'm not quoting it accurately, but he talks about how they knew that we were coming, and we have a debt to them that cannot be settled cheaply. In other words, they knew we would come, and they expected us to honor them. And so we can't stop doing that, because someday they'll be settling our debts, and one day someone will be remembering us.